But first off, I'm going to read the public comment protocol announcement. Public comment will be taken at the end of each board meeting. Persons wanting to address the board should sign up on the sheet provided. Speakers will be called in the order they are signed up. Comments should be limited to specific topics relevant to the board. At the board's discretion, limited comment may be allowed on individual agenda items during the course of the meeting as invited by the chair. And finally, all board meetings shall be recorded, including public comment periods. Second on our agenda today is adjustment and approval of the agenda. You've got that in your packet.
Move to approve is presented.
Thank you, Carl. I'll entertain a second. Second by Gary. Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain the vote. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Okay. Consent agenda is next up. Approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on January 23rd, 2025. If you've had a chance to review those, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved. Second.
I'm going to give Gary the nod on that and Ned be the second. Anybody have any questions about those? And these are minutes that Hannah put together, and this is her first time. So good job, Hannah. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They pass. Okay. Next is unfinished business. We have a budget amendment. We typically do that every year to amend the budget if there's an expense that exceeds a certain category. And this year it was affected by our cool Ford Lightning out there in the parking lot that everybody had a chance to go look at. Pretty nice. Ashley, you want to give any more details about that?
Yes, thanks, Joel. So the way the budget ordinance was adopted, this is the current year budget for FY25 that runs until June the 30th. The way we had it listed in the ordinance was capital outlay of $50,000. That was the price that we estimated for the Ford Lightning that we were buying with the Clean Air Act 103 IRA funds. And so the vehicle ended up being $62,900. And so since we had it specified as $50,000, we were going to have to move those funds from somewhere else. And since that's how the board adopted it, we need a formal budget amendment. So we're not actually increasing the total budget for FY25, but we are taking this figure of $16,500. And there's also a calculation or a spreadsheet that was in the packet. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking some funds out of services and supplies. We have a $15,000 contingency line item that we keep in there just in case we go over if there's an issue, and we try not to use that. But what we are proposing to do is take that $15,000 contingency, and then we're bringing in some additional funds for a total of around $16,215, pulling that out of our travel and training. That's usually someplace where we have some extra funds that we don't expect to spend all of. And so we are asking for the amendment. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to that page, which is to move that $16,500 from service and supplies, salary and benefits over to that capital outlay item. And if you look at the spreadsheet for all of the extra, part of the issue was the truck was more than we had budgeted. We didn't really have firm numbers when we put in for this grant a couple of years ago. And we also pulled the funds for the DMV fees. That was $2,224, bed liner, floor mats, and bed cover. So what we've essentially done is for the grant itself, we've actually drawn down the $62,900 from that grant. We still have funds remaining. What we do is this has happened with other equipment that we bought from that grant. In our report to EPA, we explained that it was more than budgeted. These other items like tax, title fee, bed liner, floor mats, and the bed cover, we're not taking those funds out of the grant. We're taking those just from other operating expenses.
Question. What training are you not doing that we had budgeted for?
Nothing specifically. We typically try to build in several trainings through the year. And this year with Helene, we're actually under a travel freeze, so we're not allowed to we're not allowed to send anybody. The county is asking that we not send anybody to any trainings unless it's required for a mandatory certification. So there are some trainings, like say in Raleigh or different places that we would have liked to have gone to, but nothing real specific that we've identified that we're missing out on.
I have another question. I don't know if you want to tackle it now or later, but looking at the budget and the grants, we're getting a lot of money from EPA. With the current political scheme, will we continue to get it, especially since we identify our priorities as being justice, diversion, equity, all that kind of stuff, which is now a no-no, especially with EPA. So I'm concerned as to what will happen if we don't rewrite a lot of these things so that the AI will not spit it out when they find the appropriate words. Because that's going to affect, if not this year, then certainly next year's budget.
Right, and what we're being advised by our associations is to look carefully at what kind of wording we have on our website and to consider removing certain words. And there's actually a list of words that EPA is removing from their program management documents and things right now. And so I don't know if I just missed it, but environmental justice was not on the list. However, equity was. So I did tweak my budget presentation to mention environmental justice, and I took out the word equity. So I think that it is something where we are being told, you need to look at these things. Right now, what's happening is Congress just passed the continuing resolution that funds us until the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September the 30th. And luckily, we were kept at level funding. So I think we included it in the board packet, but our associations, we're really just hoping that our funding levels can be kept the same as FY24. And now that has become reality for FY25. And as you pointed out, it is a concern for FY26 because we don't know that we don't have a budget for that. So again, we're cautiously optimistic that it will stay level, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, because it's also the problem that current administration is canceling grants and contracts, left and right to every agency. And knowing that the administration is not fond of EPA, that's one of our main funding sources. And, their efforts to severely cut it, which means canceling grants. So something we all need to be concerned about as to where we go in the future and how we get around it if these funds are cut off, because we'll be hurting.
Yeah, I'd add to that. Ned, yeah, I think the next couple of years are going to be challenging. I mean, we talk about this fund balance that we have, and we kind of our rainy day fund, and it's going to be impacted if we can't stay level with the grants from EPA.
Right. I think that is our hope that the grants will stay level, and that's best case scenario at this point.
Well, we hope, but we need to be prepared, if things happen the way other people want it to happen.
I do have a slide in the budget presentation for the FY26 that about the grant freeze and which ones of our funds are affected. But at the present time, the funds that are in our account that have been released to us are in our account, so they should be safe. But I think it's more the current, the upcoming budget years that is going to be of more concern.
All right, we got a budget amendment. Anybody else have any questions or comments about that? If not, I'll call for a vote. Yes, we've already moved and seconded that, right? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, on to the director's report. Ashley's done a bang-up job with her staff on the PowerPoint presentation for the next year's budget, and we're going to turn it over to her to kick it off for us.
Okay, I think I'm going to go down to the podium just because it's a little easier to see everybody from down there. James has a clicker. Right and left. Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is the FY26 budget that we're presenting today, and we will bring that back for a vote in May. And so we have presented this to county management already, and I thank Hannah for putting this together with me, and also stole some slides from Steve and James from the monitoring and other presentations that we've been doing here lately. So I don't know how well you can see this, but we're using the county's template here where we highlight high-level summary, and we're looking at personnel and operating costs and trying to highlight anything that's different here. So this year, sorry, I'm trying to get oriented. We have completed our reorganization with our retirements and have new staff members on board. So that's really exciting. Obviously, nothing new going on there. The salaries and benefit numbers are all set now. We did budget for some temporary professional services. This is the second year we're hoping to get some work done on our file digitization project. Also hoping to pay for some audits of our finances and grants. We did not budget for an intern this year. On the operating side of things, we are adding a new ozone monitoring site, so we have increased costs there. We have done some decreases to our travel training budget, and our revenues, we're seeing a decrease in grant funds, and that's mainly because the last 3 years we've had one-time increases in grant funds, and those are ending now. And so we do have a little bit of extra grant funds for FY26, that IRA grant that we bought the vehicle with. We still have some more salary and benefits that we can charge to that, and a few more pieces of equipment. I'll get into more details about that. Also, we always have some slides on our net impact to fund balance, so we can see how that looks and any changes to our fees. And at the end, we look at the strategic alignment of our goals. And then I've just got some pictures and things, just some highlights from the last budget year. So this is our high-level summary. You can see our fund balance numbers are here. Changes to salaries and benefits. Basically, the fund balance here is showing we run this at the end of the federal fiscal year, or I'm sorry, at the end of the county fiscal year. So this is FY24 we ran, showing that we have $746,000 in our fund balance. However, that is what we call a modified accrual fund balance. So that's basically looking at revenues minus expenses for the year. So it's pretty accurate, and we can pull funds out of there as needed. However, there's another way of doing these accounting calculations where you do the full accrual fund balance, and that looks at all of our liabilities, which are mainly for us are going to be retirement for staff. And this is what gets reported to the state on a financial report by the county. And so for us, that FY24 full accrual balance is $228,000. So this is something that budget wanted to highlight this year, just to make sure that it's on our radar. They gave the example, and it makes a little more sense when you think about it. For an enterprise fund like the landfill, they have a large fund balance like we do, but they have to factor in closing down the entire landfill. And so their full accrual balance also looks quite different from ours. Now with us, it's more simple. We're basically looking at our liabilities as being long-term, staff retirement benefits and things of that nature. John.
Yeah, when Ashley told me this, kind of took me by surprise that this fund balance has been kind of steady unfortunately, for the last many years. And it caused me to wonder what happens with this report to the state every year once we drop below zero on the modified accrual. Or not modified accrual, the full accrual way to do it. Is there some sort of penalty or?
I think it does. I did ask budget, you know, is there a minimum fund balance that we really need to have to be considered in good standing financially? They said, no, not necessarily. We just want you to be aware of it. But I think that we need to be prudent and realize that, you know, there are liabilities. And so I think if they're submitting a report like this to the state every year, then we should also be tracking that number just to be mindful that we do have liabilities and, you know, the county and the city ultimately. Uh-oh, James. Might need you to advance. So the next slide, this is our head count and trends. So you can see that we filled the 7th position. We've had that for the upcoming budget year and last year. On the right, you can see our operating expenses and revenues. This is without the fund balance. And I have another slide showing how much funds we actually withdrew or put back into the fund balance. But, you know, the main thing here is you can see our budget has gone down. It peaked with these one-time funds over the last 3 years from the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, it's going to go down next year because we're not going to have those extra Inflation Reduction Act funds in there. I've got some additional details here on that. Next slide, please. I think I must have hit something to take it out of that mode. So as far as what's new, personnel costs, we did put $10,000 in the budget for the digitization project. This is something that, you know, the most expensive part of file digitization is scanning the old files. So we have put those funds in here. However, that's something that we can revisit and as we go through the process. We just want to be able to get that project underway. And we did also include $6,000 for audits of grants and financials. We wanted to do that this first year with our transition, with our new team, just to make sure. We've talked to Betsy in the county about having her come back, and as we close out some of these one-time grants for the year, making sure that we're meeting our maintenance of effort and allocating everything properly to the different funds, because those have impacts going forward where we have to meet certain minimum levels based on previous years. So
What's the document retention requirements? So I noticed you're doing a digitization project. So are you looking at also the retention requirements?
Yes.
So some of the data, some of the information can just go away rather than be digitized or being held in hard copy form?
Yes, that's correct. So before we can even start on modernizing our files and data management systems, we have to first get a formal document management retention file schedule. We have a retention file schedule, but it's not been written up and approved by the State Archives Department like it's supposed to be. And so we're in the process of doing that. But to your point, a lot of these files don't have to be kept forever. Now, for permitted facilities like Duke Energy, for example, they have to be kept for the life of the facility. So that facility was built in 1964. We have files going all the way back to 1964, and we are required to keep those. Also for asbestos, because of the latency period with lung cancer, you have to keep those literally forever. However, things like complaint forms for open burning or other things like gas station permits and things of that nature, those are probably more of a, 5-year schedule. So that is part of it. And I think we're just going to have to make some decisions. The first part of the process is getting an approved plan and then starting the management system, getting files scanned coming in so that they can be searchable since they're public record and categorized properly. We can ultimately get permission to destroy the files once we've been through that process. And then we'll have to make a decision, the board will, how much money are we going to spend? Because the expensive part is scanning the old stuff. It's not the front end where we're just setting up a system. We can get things scanned into SharePoint and get the staff to do that as it comes in. So I might have gone a little beyond your question here, but I think that, right now we're getting ready to move and we're taking 14 file cabinets with us. Fortunately, the county was gracious, gave us a file room and we're over there measuring and figuring out how it's all going to fit. But ultimately, we have put off digitizing these files because of the cost associated with it. And it's got to the point where the state is now adopting, and we're going to have to adopt by reference digitization or modern electronic permitting procedures where the facilities are going to be allowed to submit reports to us electronically and permit applications electronically for the first time. And with that coming, we have got to get this done so that we can meet those needs, and facilities definitely want to see electronic reports and permit applications and things like that. So
In the case of Duke Energy, 40 years of that information is on a facility that's not there anymore.
Well, it's here.
You still have to hang on to that.
Yes. Yeah, we have stack tests and emissions inventories, and we have the original permit applications from when the coal-fired units were built. So, I mean, theoretically, I guess there could.
It's like a museum.
There's nothing out there. It's a field.
Okay, are these things that we have to keep, or can they be transferred to the State Department of Archives and History?
We are required to keep them, but once we digitize them, we can get permission to destroy the paper copies. That's one thing they've done in Mecklenburg County. They had an issue with their county in the space where they were having to pay to store the files. Fortunately for us, we're not having to pay to store the files. The county has space here for us to do that, but they actually got permission, and we could do so as well if we choose to go that route. We got a long way to go, but we could get permission to destroy the paper files. I'm not sure if that was what you were getting at, Ned, but yeah, so lots of decisions to make. But I think that the method that we're proposing here, we're not going to ship the files out to some place. What the county's recommended is getting a temporary agency to come in to the office. We will be here with them. That way, when they're scanning the files, if there's any question, they can come to us and ask where to put something. What is this? And we found that we get better results that way. So. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so for operating costs, this is mainly about the new ozone site. What we have done here, we've gotten some help from the state. Fortunately, one of the biggest costs is a building, and I think we reported in the meeting last year that the state is getting a couple of new monitoring buildings, and they've offered to let us use their building under a memorandum of agreement. So that we did not have to account for. And the cost that we have included here is $35,000. And that is $10,000. Sorry, thanks, James. $10,000 for a concrete pad and the electrical work. And then we've also allocated $25,000 to buy a calibrator and a zero air pack. This is something that's, Steve worked out. He's recommending we buy this equipment gradually. And so if we pour the pad and we get the first set of equipment, that's $35,000 this year. And then the following year, we could buy the second piece of equipment, which is closer to $18,000 or $20,000, about 18. So we've gone ahead and put this in the budget. It is required. This is because OMB took Haywood County out of the MSA. And so our area is now required to have a second ozone monitoring site.
Who's in the MSA since Haywood County's pulled out, is out of it now?
It's now Transylvania, Henderson, Madison, and Buncombe. So Haywood County, the state has an ozone site over in Haywood County. And so with Haywood County in the MSA, we had theirs in Haywood, ours in Buncombe, and we were meeting the requirements. But when Haywood was removed, which was kind of a surprise to us.
So the jurisdictions of the MSA is DAQ and us.
Yes.
So their monitor, why are they just not replacing the monitor in Transylvania or one of the other counties in the MSA? How did we end up with the obligation for another monitor if the MSA is not just Buncombe County?
Well, it was something that we agreed to with them, essentially. We felt like since we had an existing site, the AB Tech site, and it's already established and approved by EPA, the easiest thing to do for all of us, we're part of what's called a PQAO, a Primary Quality Assurance Organization with DAQ. And so the other two locals have their own separate, but we're part of DAQ and we really lean on them heavily. They write the SOPs, they do all of our calibrations of equipment down in Raleigh. There's a lot of extra work that they do for us. And so we discussed it with them and agreed that we could host the site at AB Tech. Everybody agreed it was probably the best site in the area, and EPA likes it already. So it was easier than having to site a new site. So basically it's a toxics site right now. That's where we run our toxics network. We have a building just like the one, it's a little smaller, so it didn't have a concrete pad. And so we agreed to try to make it happen to see if AB Tech would be willing to let us add to that site. And they agreed to let us use the brand new building that they have on order. And so that's just how it worked out.
It also met environmental justice requirements.
Yes.
What's that?
I said the site also met environmental justice requirements.
Yeah. It is a EJ site, as Steve said, and so that made it attractive to everybody as well, because that is required for us to consider whenever we're expanding networks or installing new networks. They want them to be in environmental justice areas.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Steve? Okay, thanks. Let's see. So I think we covered that. So basically this site is required to be operational by March of 2026. And Steve might talk about this more in his report, but we're going ahead and putting everything in the budget for it now. Sorry, I'm trying to get caught up here. Did I move too many? Okay, so other operating costs. We do have increased costs associated with Helene. We are running these temporary monitors that the state loaned us. There's one in Fairview and one in Wester, Steve? Fairview, Fairview and Swananoa, sorry. So we do have some extra supplies essentially. So we're looking at a couple $1,000, $3,000 maybe extra there. Indirect costs are projected to go up a lot. Indirect costs were low in FY24. We paid $91,000. We paid $141,000 this year, and we're expecting that could potentially go up. We usually build in about a 5% increase, so we're looking at $147,000 for FY26. And then we did decrease the travel and training budget from the $15,000 down to $12,000. We still might not spend that much, but we're trying to reduce some of these things where we can. So this is just a slide with the revenues. I'm not going to read these to you, but basically you can see that our 105 grant went up some in FY24, went back down. We budgeted $230,000. Our PM 2.5 grant, we did have some one-time funds under the EPA 103 that we put at the bottom left there. Right now we've spent, I have another slide on this, but we've spent most of that $233,000. There's about an additional $60,000 that we're planning to draw down in FY26 from those one-time funds. And I've got more details on what we bought with those in addition to the new vehicle for monitoring that was out front. Gas tax reimbursement has gone up a little bit and is expected to go up a little bit, so that helps. Permitting fees, I think the reason those have gone up a little bit, but we're showing a slight decrease. There are application fees we get for the Title V facilities that we're not going to be expecting to get the next year. That's why that went down. So again, total revenues and expenses are down as these one-time funds go off. And this we prepared for the federal grant freeze. Fortunately, we were able to get some of these funds released. This was our FY25, our PM 2.5 grant got kind of caught up in the freeze. This is a recurring fund that we get. It's not anything controversial. We did have some issues and we had to really go up to the top of EPA to get these released, but they did release them to us after I first made this presentation. So we were concerned about that because the grant period ends March 31st of this year, but we were able to draw those down March 5th. The other grant that we have outstanding that's affected by the freeze, that's gone in and out of being frozen, is this EPA 103 Inflation Reduction Act grant, somewhat controversial because it includes a lot of climate change initiatives. And so that one, we've had some trouble. We have drawn down most of it. We have 71,000 left, and we've been advised, basically it goes in and out of being frozen and not being frozen. And so what we're trying to do is, with the equipment that we have left to buy, we're buying some pumps, air pollution sampling pumps and things of that nature that aren't very expensive. We're just trying to buy one piece of equipment at a time and quick. We're not allowed to pull the funds down until we've actually spent them. So there's a risk that if we buy something and the funds get frozen, we won't be able to pull the funds down. So we're only buying things we really need, and we're just buying them gradually, slowly, and pulling down funds more frequently so that we can try to buy this remaining equipment. So down here at the bottom, some of Ned's points really is just that other federal government budget issues. We are expecting $7,500 for the electric vehicle rebate. We should get that in FY26. I expect that we will get that. I think that if they do away with the electric vehicle rebate, it would probably be for purchases going forward, not in the past. So we're optimistic about that. And the FY25 105 grant amount that we draw down in FY26, when I made this slide, we didn't know what that was going to be. But like we talked about earlier, it does look like with this budget continuing resolution that just passed, it's going to be the same as last year, which is what we were expecting. So that's good news at least. And I put no award yet, and the year ends September 30th. They have not awarded us any funds yet. However, they are working on it, and we're having some issues with Region 4. They've had some turnover with staff, and it's been kind of slow for us to get those funds, but we are confident that we should be getting at least a partial award soon. Other regions have got their money. Region 4 seems to be having a problem. Okay, so this is, a lot of the things we've talked about are in my director's report, and this I just was going to show you some quick pictures and highlights now, getting towards the end here. So this is all the equipment that we bought with this last IRA grant, including the truck, spare pumps, the T640 PM10 monitor, and these Alley Cat devices, which Steve can tell you all about. Sorry, this numbers are kind of small. This is our actual net impact of fund balance. So the point of this is just to show that while most years we balance the budget with our fund balance, or we project that we're going to draw 100,000 or so out, some years we put money back in, some years we do pull funds out. So this just kind of shows you the history going forward. FY24, I think we were projected that we would withdraw 119,000 or so. We actually put 23,000 back in. Of course, we had some unfilled positions and other things of that nature. So this is mainly just to show that we go back and forth on that. Fee changes, we did put in our rules a tonnage fee increase is different because that is based on board approval, but we did put a CPI adjustment in for the Title V fees last time we opened the rules for fee changes. And so this year that amounts to, looks like a total of $5,700. But part of that is if the board approves a tonnage fee for the Title V, an increase of $1.96 per year. I think that the current fee is maybe $62, $63. And if this increase would go up a couple of dollars, it would go up to roughly 65. So that would be an additional, that would bring us up to an additional 5,718. Anybody has any questions? That's the one fee that the board can vote on every year without us going to rulemaking, public notice and comment. So that's something we usually recommend. EPA has a memo that they do every year where they calculate what they call the presumptive minimum Title V fee. So we typically recommend adjusting the tonnage fee for that.
Question, what options do we have for raising fees if we need to?
We can raise fees. One thing I would like to do is to put a CPI adjustment in the other fees besides just the Title V. You know, that's a pretty gradual increase. But essentially, every few years, we do look at these fee raising proposals. We just have to go out and do some stakeholder outreach and go out to public notice and comment. I think the last time we raised fees was 2021, maybe. Do you know, James? I think it was 2021.
So we have to go through the public comment.
Yes. So typically what we do is we send out letters to all the facilities. We did a pretty substantial increase to the fees, the Title V fees in particular. We added a complexity fee. So what we typically do is we would look at all the fees, which ones have gone up quite a bit in the last few years. We might want to keep those the same and just raise some of the smaller ones, just to keep them reasonable. One thing that has been a focus of ours with fees is looking at what the other air agencies charge. We don't want to be a whole lot higher. The state's in the process of raising their fees, and that always helps us. So they're actually working on bringing their synthetic minor fees up right now, sort of closer to in line with what ours are. So I think it's something that, you know, we need to look at every year.
Well, yeah, I see where the county water department is raising fees, and what a lot of people think is an exorbitant raise. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And other agencies are also raising fees, and maybe it's time we think about it too.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we did it with 21. I think that's right. And we went through a pretty involved process to decide what they need to be raised. They hadn't been raised before that for a long time.
10 years.
10 years. So I don't know. It's only been 4 years since we did it, but I agree. We gotta look at it.
Yeah, typically what we can do is we'll do a proposal where we can come up with some different options, and we would bring that to the board, and we would show if we raise fees by X amount, this is how much additional revenue, and present that. And then if the board decides that they want to move forward with something like that, then we would send out letters to all the facilities. We would do public notice and comment, and try to do some outreach. So it's a lengthy process. It takes a few months, but it is something that we have to revisit every so often.
Well, and I think in the past, we've tried to kind of look as the state moved their fees, we were moving kind of in sync with them so that it wouldn't appear as if we were either taking advantage of the fact that we had a local agency. So we were kind of using that as a justification to some degree.
So you tried to maintain
Yes.
parity with DAQ.
Yeah, our fees are higher than theirs. We just don't want them to be, and like Carl said, when they raised their Title V fees, they went through a really lengthy stakeholder process throughout the state. They did a really good job, and that really helped because we were able to quickly adopt these complexity fees, which added several $1,000s to each of the Title V sources. I mean, our Title V fees are up around, I don't think I have that slide, but we have some that are up around over $20,000 a year. So they're pretty high. I wouldn't feel comfortable raising those again just yet, but like the synthetic minor fees, just to give you an example, the state synthetic minor fee is $1,500, where we raised ours to 3,000 20 years ago. Ours are 4,000 now, and they're getting ready to raise theirs to 3,000. So they're getting closer. So I think, I think we could raise them some, but we wouldn't want to raise them really high. It's one of those things where it's kind of a lengthy process, but it's definitely something that we can look at doing.
Maybe once we get through this budgeting cycle in summer, it's actually maybe y'all can present, the options to us. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think so. Typically we do things on the calendar year, we bill on the calendar year basis. So if in July we brought the board a proposal, then depending on what it looked like and what we decided, we could come back and do a public notice. Essentially, if we got a fee change in September or November, then it would be in time for the next year. So.
Well, my thinking is just based on the fact that, we're spending more than what's coming in, has been for the last however many years. There's a potential for losing federal funding and also state funding because the state is cutting back on their fees and cost to businesses as well. So are we working our way out of business here? And if we are, we need to do something.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. And so moving on, strategic alignment, we've touched on some of these things before. This is kind of a summary of last year and our goals for the next year. I'm really glad to have completed reorganization of the agency and filling that 7th position has been tremendous, especially with the increased workload that we have after Helene. And we've upgraded and expanded the monitoring network. It's great that we were able to replace all of that equipment and still have a big, healthy fund balance. That's really, I think, really helped us a lot. Recognition ceremony. We did the microbrewery project and that was really fun, but I think we're changing focus now to look at other things. We're not putting funding in for that this year. We mentioned that already. We did put funds in the budget this current year for the free radon test kits, and we've given out all but one. So if anybody didn't get a radon test kit, there's one out there still. So that's been a popular program, and we were glad that we could do that. With the additional monitors and sensors that DAQ and EPA have provided and that staff is operating, we're really proud of that this year. I've been very busy. I think this was last meeting, 150 demolition permits. That was just in 3 or 4 months after Helene. Mike's got updated numbers that we'll share coming up. Burning complaints are up by roughly 50%. And now the asphalt odor complaints are coming in because the asphalt plant has been running really hard and it's really affecting the neighbors. And Steve went out and said he'd never seen an asphalt plant run this hard. So we tried to communicate to the neighbors that this is due to Helene and all of the, the road repairs that are going on. But it's frustrating for them. But we have had the nasal ranger out, and I should have got that out. But we had the nasal ranger out before you guys got here, and we're brushing up on our new odor observations. But hopefully that won't be a problem. And, I think that APAC is probably willing to do some things to voluntarily, just anything they can do. We're trying to look at what's affecting the odors, but when it's cold still at night, a lot of times the inversions set in and it's first thing in the morning that people are really being impacted. So we're working on that. And again, goals for 26, we're really hoping to modernize our data management systems and work on the file retention policy. Want to keep working with UNCA on the sensor projects. We've really shifted away from the brewery project even though we still want to promote the energy efficiency, Energy Star programs in the breweries. And we're increasing our community outreach related to Helene with regards to the air quality index and temporary monitors, open burning and storm debris burning, indoor air hazards like asbestos, lead, and mold when people are out renovating their homes, formalizing our EJ policy and our language access resources. We're getting more documents translated into Spanish and Russian and Ukrainian. And some of these things, I'll talk about this during my report real briefly, but these items that we have out on display are some of the things we participated in the resource recovery functions that the county had 4 of in February. So we've got our PM monitor and our map that shows where all the temporary monitors are and how you can go see that data. How to make a DIY air cleaner if you're having smoke impacts from lots of debris burning. And we've got some new brochures and a 1-pager and things that Allison's been doing for us. So that's kind of our new focus now is working with this built environment group that we mentioned last time. And I don't know if you can see this very well. I do have some statistics in here for, how many permits and inspections and complaints that we investigated for the last quarter. Also working on our, Hannah and Allison have been working on our annual reports and getting those updated so we can provide some more data to the board and the public. I know, enforcement numbers, I don't have those in here, but we're compiling that as well. I know we've had questions from the board about that. Want to be able to provide more information. These equity questions are something that, is part of our county organization and aligning budget with equity. So for this particular exercise, working with UNCA on the sensor projects out in the community, also expanding our monitoring in an EJ area, and just having all of these files digitized. And we put our Title V permits on the website now, so people should be able to go on the website and see what kind of pollution there is in their community. So we think that will help with transparency and just getting the information out to the public so it's accessible. So this is just, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not advancing with you guys. That was the equity slide. And this is a Title V fee changes. This just gives you an example. I won't go into detail, but it shows the difference between the FY25 and FY26 fees that are with the CPI. And so here at the end, this is our new updated org chart. We definitely have more FTEs in monitoring. So we've got a whole additional half an FTE in monitoring. So that's really helping a lot with our continuing operations. You never know when somebody's going to be out unexpectedly. Air quality response to Helene. We've published some guidance documents on our website about open burning and air curtain incinerators. We have been working again on the temporary monitors. We talked about that. Disaster debris burning has been significant. We are tracking these. We really haven't received a lot of requests for burning disaster debris. I think people are just out there burning it. And like we talked about last time, when we find them, we're trying to make sure that they just have the 500-foot setback and that they're burning legal materials. Air curtain incinerators, we've got a slide on that. It's taken a while to get those into the community, but I have some pictures so that you can see what those look like. And this is a map that shows where the temporary monitors are and how you can find these on the AirNow fire and smoke map. I think we may have shown you this last time. It shows the 8 purple air sensors and the 2 EBAMs circled in red. So trying to get the word out to people. If you go on if the AQI is green, but you smell smoke, there's lots of monitors, not just the 10 that we have, but other community monitors. This is really good data. It's really helpful for awareness. And I've got some pictures. That's Steve installing the EBAM at Fairview Elementary. And this is one of our counterparts over at the Asheville Regional Office in Swananoa, where the second one is located there. And Purple Air locations, we have 8 of these. Steve and Allison have been out installing these, Swananoa, Barnersville. The Barnersville Fire Department, we've been getting some high readings, and so Steve had to call and found out they were having a barbecue. So they're not perfect, but Fairview Library, Leicester Library, the libraries have been great partners, and the fire stations have as well. Upper Hominy Fire Department. We've been talking to our friends at the Forest Service. They're getting ready to do more prescribed burns to try to reduce the impact. Of course, are concerned about wildfires with all the debris lying around. So they wanted to put a Purple Air at the Black Mountain Library, I think. These are ours. This is the best one you can see. I don't know if this pointer will work at all, but at the Skyland Library, that little white thing on the gutter, almost at the top of the gutter, that's the Purple Air. You can't see them. They're so tiny. But these are great. They're plug and play. You can buy one and have one at your house. And these are also similar to the ones UNCA has several of these that we've been telling you about too. So I'll try to wrap it up here.
Who would like to keep the air curtain incinerators after the storm has been cleared?
Biltmore and North End Stump and Brush. So right now there are 4. It says proposed, but basically Biltmore has 1 and they have 3 different locations. So they would like to keep one. We are asking them to submit a permit application right now. We've given them permission for 8 weeks with another 8-week extension coming up. The other one is this North End Stump and Brush. It's kind of like the Riverside Stump Dump, but it's very small, and it's out in Weaverville, and they have a very small unit. They would like to keep theirs. The other ones are not planning to keep theirs. I don't know if you guys have seen this picture, but this is the one at the Buncombe County landfill, and it is running right now. You can see just a little bit of smoke off to the top right. That's how it's supposed to look. They're limited to 338 total hours since they're a Title V facility. And they have not met that limit yet. So and this is the one at Biltmore. Sorry. This is the one at Biltmore. It's smaller. I forget how many tons per hour. These would all require Title V permits. What we learned early on was that the units that are less than 35 tons per hour don't have to have a Title V permit. So initially it seemed like it was a good idea to encourage those units, but those units are so tiny. The only one we have that's that small is at the North End Stump and Brush, and it's just not big enough to do a whole lot with.
The ash and the residue after burning. How is that disposed?
It is a beneficial use product where you can sell it to farmers.
Is that right?
So I think the extension is trying to hook people up.
Yeah, most folks are trying to, because it is a beneficial project. You can actually sell it. So for now, usually it's taken and put into a ditch, and then after it's cooled off and stuff, it can be collected. But yeah, it can be used to enrich soil and stuff. So.
And if you look here, this is an open burn of storm debris. So it just shows the difference in how much smoke. And that's why we're encouraging the ACIs. And then there are these biochar units. And so that's a focus too. And still learning about the difference. Some of these biochar units look like are being promoted by Appalachian State University. And it looks like a big tub where you can burn storm debris in. And then you're getting this beneficial product that you can then put on your crops. Then there are other biochar units that look like these big box burners like we were looking at the landfill, but they have a little bit different end product. Instead of trying to generate ash like an air curtain incinerator, they are generating a slightly different type of product. And I have to admit, this is something that we're still trying to learn about. But that is something that we're hearing a lot about as well from the city of Asheville. And I think the Forest Service, everybody's trying to find uses for this material that we're all dealing with. So So stay tuned on that. Our PM 2.5 levels, you can see our new standard is down at 9 micrograms per cubic meter, that last little red line, and we're still well below that. But the new administration has announced that they will be looking at that standard and revisiting that. And we have seen higher PM 2.5 levels so far this year compared to last year. We don't have any definitive, conclusions on if that's from Helene and all of the burning and diesel engines and work being done, but it seems logical that it could be. So I just wanted to end on a clear note to show that, we're hoping for clear skies ahead and that we continue to have great air quality. And just wanted to thank everybody on the air quality team and recognize them for all their hard work through Helene and even before that. And really excited about having a new team and got a great bunch of folks, and everybody works really well together. So appreciate the board for their support and being here for us and your volunteer time here. So does anybody have any questions? Some of these things the director's report should be pretty short now because we covered a lot.
Given this presentation like 5 times now, right?
Well, this is probably my 3rd or 4th time, so I'm getting good at it, but I did have help with the slides, like I said.
So like Ashley said, we're gonna bring the budget back at the next meeting for consideration like we usually do. So, do you have any other questions about it?
And there will be some updates when we come back in May. There's usually salary and benefit numbers might be adjusted. There's a cost of living increase that I think that they accounted for that in the current budget numbers, but that's up to the commissioners to decide. So that could be salary and benefit numbers could change. And then we'll also know more about our grants, and usually there's some other updates as well. Okay, so next up is the actual budget spreadsheet for FY26. We kind of covered a lot of that. I don't know if anybody has any. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here. Carl's got it. We are showing a projected fund balance draw of 208,000. So I think that we always conservatively estimate our revenues. I think we are going to have a pretty substantial increase in revenues from demolition fees and asbestos removal fees. However, we did not account for that in here. It's kind of hard to predict at this point what the increase in revenues is going to be. And we do think we'll have some decreases in revenues, so probably some gas stations that are not going to reopen. We've got at least one permitted facility, but that fee was less than $5,000 that closed after Helene. So I think that the revenues will be higher, but we did not try to predict those. And again, with the 16,000 we put in for the contract services, in reality, it might be I expect it's going to be a lot less than that. And the 15,000 contingency, something that we try not to spend.
The fees charged by Buncombe County. Do you see a substantial change in that with their budget situation, and when do we know what those fees are?
About the indirect fees for the
Yes.
services they provide? I don't believe so. They have an outside independent company that calculates that every year. So I think that the number we have in there, the 147,000, I don't expect it to be higher than that. I don't think that they would, add to that based on the fact that they have some revenue shortfalls. I think it's pretty standard formula. And I'm trying to think, well,
Okay.
oh, you've seen it before, haven't you? No. It has changed actually the last couple of years. It's still very complicated, but they've got a new company doing it, and every few years we get a reduction, which we got. That 91,000 was helpful, but again, I don't expect it to go up significantly. And I'm trying to think when we get that. I think we won't really know until at least the fall.
After they
After
do
the
their
budget.
budget.
Yeah.
Another thing about the indirect costs is that it's, part of it is associated with how many staff you have. So that's also why, as we got a seventh staff person, that cost has gone up in the last couple of years.
And it is somewhat in arrears, so I'm glad you brought that up because it could go up more for that reason. Any other questions about the budget?
So do we need to move on that budget at the main meeting so that you can have the public notification and, or I guess you need to have the public notification that we're going to be voting on the budget?
Right, so basically at the May meeting, we will come back with the same budget with some minor adjustments, and that's when the board will actually need to vote on it.
But do you have to make a public announcement of this budget that we're considering it at the May meeting?
No, there were a couple years where we did a separate 30-day public notice and comment for the budget, and I'm looking at Amy. But the county goes out to public notice also, and they include air quality budget as a line item since they're our fiscal agent. So they have a little footnote that says air quality budget gets approved by air quality board, which it does. But so we have the public notice procedures for this board with the packet going out, a week in advance, and then it getting rolled into the county's overall budget. So again, there were 2 or 3 years where we had a different interpretation and we did some separate notices. But for this, no, we're just our typical process.
Okay.
Okay, great. So next up, and this should be pretty brief, I do have some notes under director's report for Helene, preparations, response, recovery update. Again, air curtain incinerators, we've pretty much covered that, as well as open burning of storm debris. We haven't had a lot of requests for storm debris burning, like I said, but I think there's a lot of burning going on, obviously. We are recommending that people take their storm debris to the curb and not burn it. And also there is the private property debris removal program for folks that cannot get their storm debris out to the curb. We are strongly encouraging people to take advantage of that. And we are concerned that once the county's contractor finishes picking up at the roadway, and if people have not signed up for private property, there's obviously a lot of debris out there. And we are concerned about what's going to happen and if there's going to be a whole lot more burning. So what I have learned is that if you apply for private property debris removal by the deadline, which I think is April 16th, as long as you are eligible and you get approved, it might take it might take a while, but we are, encouraging people while that's an option.
Yeah, if I can jump in. So I've done a lot of the debris removal stuff, and as long as you go to one of the sites or apply online, the vast majority of people are being approved. And it could take up to a year just because they have to get to the sites that are being run by Tetra Tech, who is the county's emergency, I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but our contractor, they're still getting, 30, 40 applications per day, even in rural areas, because the push really is to have people apply for the TPDR program, because Ashbridge, which is the debris removal company, they're making their last passes in the coming weeks. And we've tried to the county's tried to put out a fair bit of messaging about get it to the curb, but a lot of people just can't. I mean, some of these trees are enormous. Or if there's house debris, there's all kinds of stuff. So the request is that people apply for the TPDR program, and I think they'll find it's pretty responsive.
I found that once you get all the information together that they require and submit it, then they're very proactive on contacting you. And I've got 4 applications in, and they're all in process.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to hear.
Now, if we can just get the Forest Service to operate on the emergency forest recovery program.
Is that like on the parkway and all the trees that are
That's
down?
any forest timberlands, that type of stuff to clear fire roads.
Mhm.
They haven't even begun to do the inspections yet. The Forest Service, State Forest Service is responsible for that. And of course, they've been fighting fires, but if we don't move forward on that, we're going to have big problems.
True, and the county is currently working on a wildfire plan. Obviously, everyone's concerned about all the debris that's down, and we want to address that so that we don't have wildfires as a result. I did attend a meeting called Firewood Mission this week, where there's a group called there's a volunteer group that did a firewood mission. There was someone from FEMA that led it, and they went out and got good hardwood that was on certain sites. And they worked with community organizations like churches to set up what are essentially what I call firewood banks, to get wood out, split and cut and stored so that it can be given to people that use it to heat with wood. So we're trying to help promote that. And if we do promote that, then we obviously have to promote burn wise and properly storing your wood and waiting till the wood is seasoned. And there's a lot of different programs, including my favorite wood stove change out program that I'm interested in. I would love to, try to help out the community with things like that, cleaner wood stoves and programs like that. So that's something that's being looked at. And we have been asked to do air curtain incinerator presentations, and James did one for our National Association at a permit meeting recently, and we've been invited to present at our Carolinas Air Pollution Control Association and our national NACA, National Association of Clean Air Agencies, at their spring meeting in Houston, Texas. And fortunately, James has commitments for all of these things, so I get to present his presentation with him being the subject matter expert. But I am going to get to go to Houston, and they're going to pay my airfare and my hotel. We're going to be in a group with wildfire folks from California in the battery plant fire, wherever that was. So not exactly the group you want to be in, but it is what it is. So there's just a lot going on with these air curtain incinerators. We did get an extension of the no action assurance letter from EPA last week. And so we can those units can continue to operate without Title V permits. And there's at least 4 different federal regulations that they're subject to. EPA has been saying for years they're going to simplify these, but it's very complicated. So that's something that we're learning more about. And again, we're finding that people want to keep these long term. So let's see. My other updates were just on the demolition and asbestos removal permits. Mike and James went to Hickory and met with the state of North Carolina and some folks from FEMA about procedures and the national emission standards for asbestos removal, how that's being handled with FEMA coming in and tearing down the houses, and with the county. And so that's progressing. The local building department, Bob Payne's Permits and Inspections Group, is issuing orders for certain structures that are unsafe, and there are certain emergency provisions for that. And Mike sent me a report. He had reported back in January that we've done about 130 or so demolitions related to Helene in that 4-month period. And we've done since the last 2 months an additional 80 or so, 85. So that's a lot more than normal. So Mike is super busy with that, and
Getting ready to pick up, since, she was just talking about the things coming in. The ball is done, for lack of better legal term, they're really not condemnations or letters of construction unsafe and major collapse. I guess that's the best word they use, where that will bypass, or we can do special ways they can tear the structure down, basically wet crush and haul, put a bladder bag, everything, seal it up, take it to a sanitary landfill. I don't think it's gonna be our landfill, but they have some landfills that will accept this debris as all asbestos waste, and they will have trained people on site as they demo the structures. All of it. The county needs to put about $20,000 in permit fees right now in PO, so we'll be getting permit fees on that. So.
any questions? I think I've already covered the post-Helene, the neighborhood and built environment, what we're doing with outreach. Okay, so the next up, this is pretty brief, 35 Woodfin office move. Our office is moving on April the 8th. Permits and inspections, I think they're moving on the 7th. And Mike is going to move at the end of the day, 7th or on the 8th with us. We've got, they've hired a contractor to help with the move, which has been really helpful. Person that comes out and looks at furniture placement and tries to help you figure out everything they've given us. We've got boxes, we've got labels, trying to come up with a plan. It's going to be an ordeal packing and getting ready to move again. So
Where in that building are you going to be?
well, I don't know if you have pictures, James, every floor.
Every floor.
So basically the basement is where the old state lab was. I don't know what kind of lab it was, but that's where our lab is going to be, in the basement. It's a lab. Steve and Allison have been busy with preparations for that. And on the main floor, where they're going to have environmental health permits and inspections, elections, and planning, is going to have a counter, kind of like this counter here, but there's going to be more people and less space. It's going to be similar. Mike will have his office there on that first floor, public facing area. It's going to be kind of behind all of that big counter, kind of like it is now. It's going to create some challenges for us. The rest of us are going to be on the second floor, kind of scattered around up on the second floor. And we're going to have a file room for our files. And we're going to have what we call a document management area, which is basically like our admin office. And so it'll be all over the place.
I assume there was a meeting room similar to this on the second floor or somewhere there.
It's actually in the basement, and it's a large conference room. This board, the planning board, and the Board of Elections will be meeting down in that room. It's not ready yet. It's not going to be ready. We're going to have to continue meeting here initially. They're still buying. They bought furniture, and the furniture is going to be different. It's going to be kind of modular, kind of like what you see out here. It's not going to be up on an elevated platform like that. It's going to have, things like the flags, and we're going to have all the audio visuals. They're going to leave all of this here so that we can continue to meet here while they finish buying all the equipment, getting things all set up. It's going to have a divider, so it'll have 2 rooms, but when we have our board meetings, they will need to take the divider down so that we can all sit. This obviously we're taking up a good bit of space here, so that'll be both rooms in use. There's going to be a break room, a kitchen, and everything down there. So, it should be nice, but they're still working out the details of all the equipment and everything. And I don't think we're going to have many conflicts, but Board of Elections, when they get busy and they have lots of meetings, they have negotiated kind of first in line. So essentially, if it's a busy election time and your board needs to meet when our board would normally meet, us or planning will have to meet elsewhere. They're going to get the right first. But again, we've compared schedules. Doesn't look like there's going to be much conflicts except for busy election times, potentially. Okay, surplus ozone monitoring equipment. We did put that equipment on Gov Deals, ozone monitoring equipment. We had $1,000 minimum, and the only bid, we got a couple bids, but the most we got bid was $100, and it was up there for a month at least. So what we'd like to do, if the board is amenable to it, is donate the equipment to UNCA. They're interested in the equipment. I'm looking at Amy because my understanding is this board, would have to vote for something like that. And then I believe that if this board wanted to donate the equipment, I would then have to go to the county commissioners because they legally own the equipment that we bought because we're not allowed to own property. And so that would be sort of a two-step process where I would have to get permission from the commissioners to officially donate it.
Yes, that's correct, but we could draft a resolution. It's an easier process than it sounds. So they
just
have
had it stolen.
they have to determine that it's surplus and make a few findings, but I've done that before, so we can.
Okay.
So is that something we can take up at the next meeting or
Sure.
vote now?
I would think would you guys vote first and then I would go, that way when I go to the commissioners, I can say my board voted and they want to do this.
I think procedurally that would be the best way to go, so that once you get over you don't have to go back and forth.
Are there any options other than UNCA? Just curious.
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know. Probably.
UNC has been a good partner. I would support. Donate to them.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
I could speak to how we would use it in our department. I know that Chris Godfrey, the chair of our department, he teaches an instrumentation class. And so I think he wants to use it in that class, right? Not only to show students this is a type of ozone equipment, right? Kind of put it together and actually see how it works. They put together these in situ weather stations in that class. So I think they could attach it to one of those and just use it for a project for a class, right? So giving students that hands-on experience for, air quality equipment. I know it's old, but, still allows them to kind of see what it's like.
When that vote happens, it may be best if you are recused from that vote, just to keep it clean.
Well, I don't know if AB Tech has any kind of program where they may be interested as well. Just curious.
I don't know.
Does the board feel motivated to take a vote on this now? Should we wait till next meeting?
Do we need something from an institution that would receive it that, yes, they're agreeable to accepting it? Something formal and not just an informal, we're going to donate it such and such, where they may say, well, we don't know that we want that, or that I think we should at least have.
Yeah.
And maybe send that request out to AB Tech, UNCA, and maybe Warren Wilson, 3 within our purview, and just see, is there any interest? And then we would have something that we would base our decision on.
Like right now, we just have an email from UNCA, from the department chair that they're interested. That's essentially, all that we have right now.
I tend to agree with Carl that we ought to put out some sort of word to the local institutions and just see what kind of response, and then we can turn it over to Gabriel.
I guess the only difficulty is how do we determine if we get more than one response? How do we make a decision there? I mean,
Well, that would still be our decision who we're going to give it to. But I just think we should have something formally saying that, yes, we would accept it if it was donated to us. And I don't know, that email may be sufficient, but
Actually, can you draft an email to Warren Wilson, AV Tech, and USDA, just more formally, we have this surplus equipment?
Please let us know if you're
if you actually
interested.
how you might use it.
How would you use it? Okay, yeah, we could do that.
Basically.
Yeah, I'd send it to Blue Ridge Tech as well, and I don't know if they're into this sort of
Well,
stuff.
they're
or
not in our,
Yeah, they're in Harrison County.
Yeah,
I would think we would go first to the,
I mean,
within the.
okay, you just
actual
want to keep
Buncombe
it Buncombe
agency
County,
first.
whatever.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. That's good. Okay. All right, thanks. So next up, website updates. I just left that on here because we are moving to a .gov email address, and we're going to have a new website address that's also going to be a .gov instead of a .org. And so stay tuned on that. The new website where we are going to be able to update our own content is going to be under a new company, so it's going to look a little different. So you're going to be seeing some updates. Our current website and our current emails will work for a while, and I think the transition is supposed to happen in May. And Radon Awareness Month, we talked about that already. Monitoring update, that's you, Steve.
Well, I know you have a lot of information. Everybody's getting tired, so I'm just going to keep my comments pretty brief. The big news since the last meeting, ozone season started for us March 1st. Also, since the last meeting, Allison and I attended the ambient monitoring workshop that the state puts on every year. Just, training and updates and things like that. While we were there, we picked up our certified ozone equipment that we had dropped off in November. So, those services they provide to us. Short year so far, but just some completeness numbers. For the PM 2.5, we're at 97.8%. And for the ozone bent creek, just small sample set, 95%. A little news on the AV Tech site front. The state was able to finally make contact with EPA regarding their regarding the site, and then they gave approval. They like the site, and so we kind of been waiting on that. Where we're standing now is that we're waiting for. We've had an email agreement, well, not agreement, that from AV Tech, they said that they were interested and we could put the site there, but they want to have their lawyers drop, I guess, like a memorandum of understanding or something like that. So we're just waiting on that. Once we get that, I've already got permits lined up to go out there and get the permit for the concrete pad. We'll line getting that done, and we should be ready, to receive the building. The state is looking, they've been having some trouble moving stuff through their budgeting process. So it's probably at best going to be September before they have the building. But at this point, I don't see any reason why we won't be able to start operating March 1st of next year. So fingers crossed, but everything looks good right now. I guess the last thing is that, we're still participating in a weekly special monitoring call for the EBAMs and purple airs that we've deployed. This calls with the state and some other stakeholders, and just going over some issues we're having, or possible relocations and things like that. So that's really all I wanted to let the board know, unless you have some questions about anything. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Permit renewals are next. We just have two.
Okay, the first one is Black Rock Crushing. Updating the general conditions. Any particular, there's a note there, James?
I mean, the only thing obviously that probably might have looked a little unusual is we don't have an inspection report on it. These are, we have portable concrete crushers that may not operate in the county for multiple years. And instead of reapplying for permits, some of them just opt to keep a permit open. That's one of these facilities. So I think it's been 5 years since they've operated, if I'm not mistaken, in the county.
I think they operated in.
Yeah, 4 years though. Yeah.
Most of these plants work for APAC. They are all effective. So currently BlackRock was the contracted worker. There's been some issues there, so they may be switching companies, which is why we have all these different crushing companies with permits through us, but they don't kind of work through it.
I entertain a motion to approve the permit renewal for Black Rock Crushing.
So move.
Second.
Second by here. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Second one's Morris Funeral Home, a crematory permit. Specifics on that, James?
Nothing specific. They're a small operating unit up on Merriman Avenue. We thankfully don't hear any complaints about them, which is great. They're right on Merriman. If they had problems, we'd know about it. I mean, you know, they had a change in permit contact recent, which has been their only little hiccup. But other than that, they've been a great facility to work with.
Anybody move to approve? Motion.
Second.
Second by Ned. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, we have no new business. I guess we go ahead and get the information on the ozone equipment for next time. That could be part of our new business next time. And then other business, Amy, anything from legal?
Yeah, other than the fact that we are working through the constantly changing barrage of executive orders that seems to be affecting the grants that all the county departments are getting, including and so we're giving advice as they come in, and sometimes we get an executive order, we change requirements, only to find out that a judge has filed an injunction staying that executive order. So at this point, we're trying to stay the course as much as we can, and that may affect some of the grant money that that air quality received, but to that extent, just let us know. We're gonna have to handle it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Advisory committee report. We've since Evan left, we've restructured that, and that's gonna.
I got have a comment. We're looking to resurrect that committee.
All right.
At the end of April, we're thinking about either 28th or 29th of April, which is a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Caitlin, I don't know how that fits in with your schedule.
I teach until 4:45 on Wednesdays, so depending on the time.
Okay, so Tuesday would probably be preferable.
Does Monday work at all? I think
Monday I teach until 4:45.
Okay, Monday is
so it
not a
sounds
good
like
day for
Tuesday.
me.
Okay, it sounds like Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Great.
we leave it in your hands, Ashley.
all right, sounds like Tuesday it is. Thank you.
Okay, on to the calendar. Next meeting is May 8th, and that'll be in this boardroom since the new one won't be ready, right?
Yes.
Okay, everybody okay with that particular date? Perfect. And finally, we're down to announcements. Anybody have anything to add for the group? All right, it's been a long meeting, lot of informative meeting.
I have an announcement. There's cookies from Owl Bakery over there, so please have one. Please take one.
Yeah, we want to have an empty box.
Yeah.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Motion by Gary.
Second.
Ed, we're adjourned.